Alrighty. Okay, perfect. Hello, everybody. Um, Looks like we are good to go. We're starting right on time. Wonderful news. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Morgan Alonji. I'm a Conservation Nebraska AmeriCorps member. Tonight we have Bob Henrickson. Um, and hopefully this is not your first time with us. It'll be a great time. Bob's always got so much to talk about, so I will not hold us up. With that being said, we do have a few things. Well, I have a few things to go over. Tonight, while we have our presentation, your mics are muted, your cameras are off, but please, while we're going along, throw any questions you have or comments into the chat or the Q&A section, and Bob will do his absolute best to answer those as we go. Um, and at the end of this, we will also launch a 4-question survey. We appreciate you taking that. It allows us to keep planning these events with Bob and all of our other wonderful speakers. If there is anything else that you want to rewatch, go back, look over, share the video, we will have it up on our Conservation Nebraska YouTube page within a few weeks. I am going to hand it over to Bob Henrickson, and I will address the echo issue. If it um, does not get better, please put that back in the comments, and I will see what I can do.
You got this, Morgan. Hey, thanks for that intro. Hi, folks. Hope you're doing well tonight, and wherever you're watching from, you're getting a little rain where you're at. We had a little shower move through earlier in Lincoln, and we got chances for more this evening. So excited about that. And you'll be probably aware that July was a pretty good month for certainly Lincoln. We had, I think it was like 6.7 inches of rain in the month of July, and I think it averages around 3.5. So who would have thunk it as we were beginning 2026 that we'd have a wet July, but grateful for that. Well, hey, I'm excited about tonight's topic. I don't want to say I'm certainly no entomologist. I'm certainly no bug expert, but I thought, nobody really talks. I don't see anybody talking about beneficial bugs. So I put this PowerPoint together actually a couple years ago, kind of in my back pocket, and said, yeah, I'd like to talk about this some point. So thanks to Conservation Nebraska for allowing me the opportunity to do that because, bugs get a bad rap, right? As we all know. But love them or hate them, in our backyard, mosquitoes, they're definitely an issue. And we have to contend with them every evening. And people say, how do you deal with the mosquitoes? Well, I put on repellent, and I just live with it. But anyway, that's just me. All right. So, as you may or may not know, I'm work for Plant Nebraska. We are formerly Nebraska Statewide Arboretum. We are now Plant Nebraska. We got some, I think our logo is really cool, and we have t-shirts, hats, all the cool bling available on our website at plantnebraska.org. Lots of good gardening information because tonight's topic, really kind of involves native plants. It involves more of a naturalistic style of gardening. And you're right at home on our website looking for information on how to get started and how to do things. So I invite you to check it out at your leisure. Okay, so we're going to talk about beneficial backyard bugs tonight. But first, I want to put in a plug for a show I host on KZOM, Nebraska's only community radio station, 89.3 FM, kzom.org. If you're into music, it's a great station to just listen to because it's all uh, run by volunteers. All the programming is. And there's something like 80 different volunteers, including my show, How's It Growing? Every Wednesday, tomorrow, 11 till noon. And I'm flying solo tomorrow. I don't have a guest lined up. So I would invite your questions anytime on the program. Yeah, enjoy doing it and bringing it to you. Let's see. The echo is intolerable. I'm leaving the meeting. Uh-oh. Still have a bad echo. Well, I don't know what's causing that, but I'm going to keep talking and hope it goes away. And yeah, I guess more people chime in and say, yeah, this is driving me crazy because it could be just an individual speaker. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, I hear people are chiming in here. No echo for me. It's not for me. Okay. Yeah, I'm wondering, a lot of people are saying, fine, fine, fine. Okay, groovy. So I'm going to keep going. Cool. It gives me a chance to see you guys. How's it going? All right. Because, when you're talking to your computer screen, you kind of wonder, are there humans out there? I don't know if you've ever had to do this. It's just kind of weird, right? But anyway, all right. So let's get back to bugs. I consider my landscape at home, I have an insectary, not just a pollinator garden or whatever you want to call it. I'm growing insects. That's my goal because we need habitat for these critters. I think it's critical because this is kind of where what we've become. Can you see where this golf course was made? No, right? It could be Maryland. Heck, it could be Santa Fe. It could be California. It could be Lincoln, Nebraska. We're kind of in love with our lawn, and we need to diversify our landscape because that is really not much for habitat right there. 21st century or 20th century landscaping is we kind of shoved a few shrubs and perennials up against the foundation and forgot that there's room to put landscape beds beyond the foundation. But I think people get a little afraid of going away from foundation plantings, that it's hard to take care of. And I'm here to tell you the lawn is much harder to take care of in my book than a good hardy native perennial. And I'm seeing some chats coming in. I can see you are sharing the notes page, not the slideshow presentation. Hmm. I'm not sure what that means. The notes page. Well, I'm seeing the PowerPoint, so I'm not sure what's going on with that question. Anyway, all right, 21st century landscaping, that you see a lot of new developments going up, and they forgot, oh, wait, I can plant a tree or I can put in a flower bed. So you see this all over the place, not just in Lincoln, Nebraska, but the whole entire country. And I'm here to say, it makes a difference to insects. Habitat loss is generally thought to be the most important factor driving insect declines. And I guess if you grew up like me in the 70s and 80s, when you took a trip in your car, the grill in front of your car and your windshield was often pelted with a lot of insects. Anymore, you don't see that as much. At least I'm noticing that as you're driving around at nighttime. Okay, hopefully this is good news in the chat. What am I missing? Okay, there's a good one. I agree that it's an imperative that we have the beneficial bugs, so no invasives or destructive bugs. Yeah, yeah, and that invasive, the emerald ash borer, sure has made its mark. Lincoln, Nebraska, where green ash, we have a lot of them. I'm seeing a lot of half-dead green ash. So we're really going to kind of hit a breaking point here in the next several years, folks, where a lot of green ash are going to be coming down, coming out, and it's going to make a difference as far as our heat island effect, in my opinion. So here's our typical American landscapes, right? Little meatball shrubs, and we mulch with river rock. Not a whole lot of habitat for insects going on with those landscapes. Basically, a biological food desert. We need more wild gardens like this that implore a lot of native plants, but I think still look gorgeous. It doesn't have to be a huge space, but if everybody does their part and does a little bit, then we have these connector points from landscape to landscape. This is a landscape at Hastings College. This is their big science building here, and they decided to put a huge rain garden in that accepted all the water to this building. So whenever a rain comes, it's all diverted into this. It's hard, obviously not can't tell from the picture, but it's a big depression that accepts rainwater, and then the rainwater subsides, and the plants are fat and happy. And you can do some landscaping too. What's going to invite the most wildlife, i.e. insects, and then other wildlife like songbirds and whatnot to your landscape? I was a wildlife biology major in college, not a horticulture major. So what I learned is they call them edge species. So where grassland meets forest, whether they call it an ecozone or ecotone, where those meet, it often has the greatest diversity. So you can kind of mimic that where you have overstory trees and understory trees under them, and then finally maybe some shrubs under there, and finally some perennial ground covers. Or there's no flowers in this picture, but it sure would be nice if they planted some flowers in the foreground of these shrubs. So all the leaves that drop off these trees then will fall into this landscape. You don't have to rake them up. You don't have to mulch. The leaves become your mulch. and that becomes a very attractive area for wildlife and especially diverse landscape for insects as well. And this is my yard, and this area has expanded since I've expanded the fire hydrant actually has been moved by the city, and then I put a flower bed around it. So very little lawn in this big corner lot, and I have a diverse mix of trees, flowers, ground covers, and I've kind of made my landscape that way so that when all the leaves come off, I'm just blowing them into the landscape beds. I'm not raking anything, and all my plants come up right up through that mulch, and they're nice and happy. We can do these dense planting areas to reduce and filter storm runoff. So when we do get those 4-inch downpours, our landscape is more apt to accept that water rather than that water running off and all going into the gutter. A landscape like this will absorb that rainfall and take advantage of it. So then the trees that are up above, this is kind of a woodland sedge garden you're looking at. Then the trees up above that are shading this site also take advantage of that extra moisture that's allowed to filter in rather than run off. So it just creates a nice habitat for insects as well. So easy thing that we can all do in our own landscapes, especially those of us that have a lot of shade, which believe you me, I do. Let's see if we have anything. Huh. I'm not sure what to do. It's not a big deal, but I think the presenter has to click screen share and select the PowerPoint screen and not the notes. Hmm. How do I do that, guys? Wow. You are screen sharing. Is that right? Hmm.
I think we can still see it. There's just it
Okay.
must be a different view of where we could edit notes, but we can still see your PowerPoint.
Okay. All right. Very good. I'll get
And
rid.
then there is a question in the Q&A, and I can read that if you don't have the ability to see it.
Let's see here. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. They are asking, is a clover garden good for bugs?
Yeah, I see a number of people saying that. What's kind of crazy is clover's kind of gone back and forth. Some of them call it the mini clover lawn. I don't know what species that is. Just go with your standard white clover lawn because from what I've seen selling as that mini clover, it was just a white clover. I don't know if it was that certain company, but anyway, yeah, I think it is. And that it really clover tolerates a lot of shade, add some nitrogen to the soil. I think if you just have a shady lawn where certain plants aren't doing so well, like your grass, the clover will kind of move in. But yeah, the clover flowers, of course, and bees are going to take advantage of those flowers. And it doesn't get so tall to where, you have to mow it as often. You can set your mower really high so you don't mow the flowers off. Is what I like about it. And it fixes nitrogen, adds some natural fertilizer to the soil. So yeah, I think a clover lawn. However, for me, I want more than just that monoculture. I want a diverse mix in that lawn. So not just a clover lawn per se. And there's lots of information out there on these eco-friendly lawns that you can, check out too. Yeah. Oh, June beetles love the clover nectar. Oh, that's cool. Uh, and what benefits do sedges provide? Beth asks. Beth, that's a good question. As far as benefits go, it's probably this picture says it best. They grow in clumps. And these clumps, what happens in the fall when my leaves all drop, I don't have to rake them. Now, I may have to do a light rake where if they're really deep, but I'm leaving those leaves in between my clumps. And this is what it looks like coming up in the spring. The leaves are all sitting there as nature's mulch. I don't have to go get wood chips, which is an expense and a hassle. I got tired of putting wood chips down. So these sedges really create that tough area for leaves to fall, and yet they come right through it. And then between these clumps, you can put some fun wildflowers, the woodland wildflowers like wild columbine and woodland phlox. Heck, you could even put bulbs in between them if you want, like daffodils and crocus and snowdrops and things like that. and they'll come up right through that leaf mulch as well. I found even if my leaf mulch is 6 inches deep, they'll come right up through it. So it's a great way to also if it's under trees and these woodland sedges under trees, you see, me not having to mow or go in there and mulch, really never step foot in there. I'm not compacting the soil. And last time I checked, trees don't like compacted soil. So when you're compacting the soil, when we get a heavy rain, um, the rainwater runs off. A compacted soil is not a good place for insects to burrow into overwinter. You want a nice loose soil and nothing that can provide that, in my opinion, other than fallen leaves. So that's the main benefit of sedges. They green up early in the spring. They green up before your lawn greens up. That's one of the reasons I like them. They're tough as nails. They can take any drought. Grasshoppers don't like them. Rabbits don't like them. Deer don't like them. So nothing eats them. Their roots are compatible with tree roots. I mean, I could go on and on, Beth. They're just awesome, okay? Yeah, and as Adam said, dozens of butterfly and moth species also host on sedges. Most of them skippers, I believe, Adam, if I remember correctly. But yeah, they're just awesome. Are there plants that we should avoid planting because they repel the beneficial bugs? Hmm. Yeah, Janet, I'm not too sure about that. If anybody can answer that, please chime in. Nothing's jumping out at me per se. Obviously, in my opinion, we just avoid invasive species that the critters are like caterpillars, moths, and butterflies are laying their eggs on our native plants. They're not laying them on invasive species. So you could look at that way to avoid planting introduced plants, focus on native and nearly native. What I mean by nearly native, Janet, is native to me, it's a big word, obviously. I think of it more of a regional sense. I have no problem choosing a native plant that may be native to even Pennsylvania, right? As long as it's native to North America, because those critters that feed on those plants are also feeding on the same species in Nebraska. So anyway, yeah, that great question. Yeah, so many beneficial insects overwinter under this leaf mulch. Now, it's not like they're just living right under the mulch, they're burrowing in the soil, but they're not going to burrow in the soil in a lawn. They leave that leaf mold. And if you're just doing wood chip mulch, those critters have a hard time burrowing in that because that leaf or the wood chips kind of becomes impenetrable to them. So it's easier for a burrowing insect to get in leaf mulch. And I think fireflies are a good example because they love to live under leaf mulch, and we can see it at our own place. We have a lot of fireflies during firefly season, and I don't see the neighbors have near as many, the neighbors with a lot of lawn, in other words. So anyway, it's a necessary component in raising a diverse mix of insect species. So try to create a landscape where you're allowing the leaves to fall. And I know it's easier said than done. And certainly I'm nothing against light raking to kind of tidy it up enough to where your neighbors aren't mad at you or you can't stand looking at it. Yeah, so we just need to mulch less, mulch different. In other words, let the plants become nature's mulch, and the leaves fall in between those plants because we have good intention putting mulch down to keep the weeds out and the moisture in. But if we're putting down landscape fabric first and then mulch on top, that is basically not creating habitat for beneficial insects. They're not going to burrow under that mulch because they can't get in the ground. And then we got cavity nesting bees, that make nests in dried stems and twigs. These are solitary bees. So when you're cutting back plants, notice those stems that are hollow or soft inside, like Joe Pye weed, your goldenrods, your coneflowers, your monardas, your elderberries, anything with what we call a pithy stem or a soft, spongy stem. Those are the ones that, as I'm cutting things back, tidying up in the spring, I will leave those because I use a weed whip with a big, intense blade on it. So the grasses come back, cut back easy and whatnot. Not the sedges, those I just leave and the stuff comes right up through them. But these other stems I just leave and I cut those back with my pruners and leave about 18 inches of that stem remaining. And it's, you could describe it as, is it clean? No. Does it look really messy? You're tired of seeing brown in March, I must admit, but the plants come up really quickly through the leaf mulch. and then cover those cut back stems pretty quickly. And then you might even see or get to notice a solitary bee actually making a home inside. There's that pithy stem that you can see. And then here you see a plant that was cut back and then the new growth already starting. And then in another 3 weeks, you won't even be able to see those stems because the new growth completely covers them. And there's a Monarda, kind of a good example where I would cut that back to maybe 18 inches just to tidy it up in the spring. Yeah, what is a weed whip? Is that also known as, yeah, a weed whacker? Yeah, it's the same thing, Jennifer. You can buy, I'm done with the string trimmers because they're annoying. So what I did is I got a commercial weed whip. It's kind of pricey, but then you can buy a head that you can put on that weed whip. And this one comes with 3 plastic blades that you can change out. And those plastic blades go through like a 1 inch sunflower, like butter. So love that thing. It cuts back and then I just replace the blades periodically, maybe twice a season at the most. And yeah, it really goes a long way. I even cut back grass with it. It's much better than those annoying string trimmers. And you can even say, well, I have an elderberry that needs to be cut back. Well, next time you cut your elderberry back, save those branches because they have hollow, pithy stems and they make great, natural bee hotels rather than, making one out of wood. Yeah. Okay. Morgan says we have more in the Q&A. Morgan, go ahead. I can't see that for some reason. Go ahead and
Okay.
hop on and tell me those.
Yeah. One of our attendees said avoid exotic plants because beneficial bugs avoid them when that question was brought up a little previously here.
Yeah.
And then we do have two questions. We have another question that says, does it matter which bushes and shrubs you plant under certain trees, such as under a maple tree?
Yeah, and you're probably referring to under a maple because those a lot of surface roots, a lot of roots in general. Um, yeah, sure. I mean, dense shade, it's challenging to grow anything in dense shade. I think that's one of the reasons I like those sedges too, is I can buy them in little plugs, so I'm not having to dig big holes and damage my root system as I'm planting. Certainly, there's some shade tolerant shrubs you can go with. That I didn't really come with a list for those. But yeah, even at my house, I have, choke cherry of all things in my shade. It's a very shade tolerant shrub. Mind you, it doesn't get much fruit on it, but it tolerates the shrub. Even hazelnut is a good one underneath trees. Say you've got an oak tree that's limbed up 20 feet and you're looking for something, different viburnums tolerate a lot of shade, like the arrowwood viburnum. Gosh, I like the Lindera, the spice bush, great plant for part shade. There's good lists, and I'd encourage you to go to Plant Nebraska for, shrubs for shade. You could look up, and then I'm glad you asked the question about exotic plants are not good for beneficial insects. And, one thing, and I would agree, to a certain extent, but you also got to look at exotic plants are here and a lot of them are here to stay, unfortunately. I look at the Siberian elm, for example, the white mulberry that came everywhere, right? But certain insects are actually feeding on the white mulberry, laying eggs on them. So I kind of look at it like this. If you have, let's say, an exotic plant, and let's throw salvia into the mix. The salvias that people plant, pretty, you know, uh, purple blue spikes, and the insects love them. Veronicas, the insects love them. Um, I could keep rattling off the plants that come from other countries across the pond, as I like to say, and I still see native insects feeding on the nectar and pollen of those plants. And quite honestly, nobody that has done studies, as far as I know, saying, okay, if a native insect is feeding on a plant from another country, another continent, is it getting the same benefits as it would feeding on native plants? Is it the same nectar? Is it beneficial pollen? Is it beneficial nectar? Because I'm convinced that a lot of nectars out there, whether they're exotic or native, are full of beneficial chemicals in them, the terpenes and other things that make them beneficial to us humans medicinally. building our immune systems, I feel that same diverse diet. So what I'm saying is plant natives, mostly natives, but don't fret if 30% of your landscape is made up of non-natives or plants from another continent even, as long as it's not invasive, right? Which salvias aren't, which veronicas aren't. Oregano, if you've ever seen oregano in flower, the insects clamor over it. Mints in flower, the insects clamor over them. So I just say, to me, the lack of habitat is the problem, not the chastising somebody for planting something exotic. For me, our habitat competition is rooftops. Our habitat competition is asphalt, concrete, corn, soybeans, lawn, all those things. So we just need to plant more flowers, period, right? Oh yeah, good one, Adam. Eastern Wahoo underneath your trees. Great example of something we can plant. There's lots of different shade-loving shrubs out there that you can do. All right, great questions, you guys. Keep them coming. All right. All right, I think I answered that to the best of my ability. I just, again, I observe these non-natives to see, are native insects hitting them? Or is it just honeybees? Because honeybees grew up with a lot of these plants that can come over across the pond from Europe. But we also have plants that have come from China too in our gardens. Very few hardy ones from, say, places like South America, mostly from Europe, and Eastern and Western Europe, upper elevations, as well as China is most of where our so-called exotic plants come from. Well, think of Russian sage. Well, insects love Russian sage. Well, it's from Russia. Russian sage has a very strong scent to it. And is that scent volatile oils? And are those volatile oils of benefit to insects? I think they are. Oh yeah, I agree. Bowie says we need more milkweed. Yes, we do. And one way to assure more milkweed is planting and learning about them. I was just at a friend's house this afternoon to see if I could harvest swamp milkweed seed, and all of the plants that he had last year were gone. It's a short-lived species, so you have to allow it to reseed. Common milkweed runs underground, so people don't like that because it comes up in places I didn't intend. And it's an easy pull if you don't want it in a place that's not coming up, just pull that plant, right? Or cut it back and make it come up again. But yeah, we need more milkweed. That's for sure. Butterfly milkweed is an awesome plant, but we have other species native to Nebraska too, but we won't harp on that anymore. All right, so let's move on. Major groups of beneficial insects, right? These are all the good insects out there: bees, wasps, flies, butterflies, moths, beetles. We got predatory insects, and we got soil building insects, which I think often get left behind on their importance. So let's talk about the living soil a little bit. The insects of litter and soil. We got, earthworms, insects, bacteria, fungi, other organisms. All these things have an important role in the soil, right? They break down organic matter and release nutrients at the same time. But oftentimes when we see a scary looking beetle like this, our first reaction is to smash it. I think I've seen those people. They get spooked by them because they're kind of freaky looking, and they don't like it crawling around their neighborhoods, so they smash it. But don't kill it. They're important and recycling plant, for the leaf litter that's there. They're going to feed on that, the decaying organic matter. And of course, if a bird gets lucky enough, a ground feeding bird discovers that grub, they have a nice meal too. So have you ever seen one of those rhinoceros ground beetles? They're really cool. And if there's a species down in South America that I've seen that's like as big as your hand. Pretty impressive critter, but completely harmless to us humans. They don't bite or anything. And then have you ever seen this? The giant stag beetle, they're cool too. Their grubs are kind of gross looking, but a great meal for a bird. And these are often there's the ones that are going to break down the trees in the forest. They're eating on decaying wood that's lying around. So it's always good to leave a few, like kind of that wood pile for habitat, but you're also supporting beetles and they're just an important part of the food chain for those ground feeding songbirds and other things that might take advantage of them. Did you realize even a fox's diet is 25% insects? A bear's diet is 25% insects. Gosh, what else did I read? Oh, raccoons eat a lot of insects. So they're actually more important, I think, as a food source than people realize. So larvae of many beetles hunt for prey and leaf litter or develop in decaying wood. So again, that leaf litter is an important thing. And oftentimes that in like in certain shows you'll hear, can I leave the leaves on the lawn? Now that will smother the lawn eventually, but if you create landscapes where those leaves drop, they're not going to be blown around back and forth all winter long and next spring. Once they're set, they're set. And this is shallow enough, any plant would come up right through that as far as a perennial plant in the spring. I think it's a gorgeous looking mulch, but that's just me. All right, let's talk about ants. Love them or hate them. We all hate ants when they get in our house, right? And they're annoying. We just have to make sure we seal the house up so they don't get in. I know that's easier said than done. We've certainly had our issues with ants, but man, I call them nature's bulldozer. And if you look around, you pay attention, I think we're seeing fewer and fewer scenes like this on sidewalks. We're seeing fewer and fewer scenes out in the landscape of just an ant nest where the crumbled soil is up around the hole. Are you guys seeing them in huge numbers anymore? I don't know about my place. I guess I need to pay more attention. I certainly see plenty of ants, but man, not like we used to growing up back in the day. Of course, they dig a labyrinth of tunnels that aerate the soil. And so when you get a heavy rain and whatnot, that allows the moisture to penetrate the roots of and the roots of the plants then have access to that. So they create tunnels and they also till the soil by bringing the pebbles and particles to the top. And the leaves and the insects brought to the nest decay and fertilize the surrounding plants because the leaf cutter ants will bring those leaves back to their nest, and then those decompose and you know, add organic matter to the soil. They act as decomposers. So basically, they are important part of the ecosystem. And I can't remember if I read, there's people who are really into ants and just the amount of soil that ants in a given yard of soil, how much they move in a given year is pretty impressive. I don't have that number in my brain, so I'm not going to talk about it. Well, anyway, ants are important. And how about these guys, right? Who doesn't love the roly-polies or the sow-bibbed pill bugs, the crustaceans of the soil, more closely related to a crustacean than they are insects. But we had to include them because, can't look like a bug, right? But get this, people actually will cook these things and eat them. Never tried it. Don't think I'm going to do it. But man, I know in our yard alone, we probably have a million of these things. And I'm proud to say that because of all the leaf litter. They feed on decaying plant matter like leaves and whatnot, and they're an important part of the ecosystem. And songbirds such as wrens, nesting wrens, because when wrens are looking to feed their young, they're often flying down to the ground, going after spiders and sow pill bugs and other things in the leaf litter. And so it's a good, quick, nutritious meal for them. But anyway, at our place, if I cut back a bunch of things and just kind of lay the branches down and let them sit there for a day or two, maybe it rained one night or whatever, and then when I go to pick those finally, pick them up and to haul them off somewhere, the pill bugs that congregate underneath those branches, it's like everybody scatters when I pick them up. And it's just really cool to see because otherwise I wouldn't know they're there. They're always living that dark subterranean life in the dark zone, as are these guys, the millipedes, right? But when you see the millipedes, you kind of freak out. But they're another one that break down decaying wood. They're essential decomposers in the soil. And yeah, here's the American giant millipede. Have you ever seen one of these? They're really cool. They're responsible for decomposing as much as 10% of the leaf litter in a garden, and they benefit other soil microorganisms that work intimately together to turn debris into nutrient-rich soil. So that's what I'm after is teaching you if you leave the leaves, if you have leaf litter, you're going to raise more beneficial insects like this. Yeah, you might say it's creepy crawly, but man, I think they're cool. And again, more and more rare in the garden because we do a good job of either mowing the leaves, raking the leaves, blowing the leaves, hauling the leaves off, but then we're not creating that diverse habitat for critters like this. All right, now let's talk a little bit about insect predators, the cool group. So this is a wasp laying its eggs on a caterpillar. So you can see its proboscis or little whatever egg laying device. I can't remember what they call that. So they'll lay a single egg all over the thing's back, and then when the egg hatches, the little critter eats them from the inside out. I know it's a tough way to go. Okay, ground beetles. Here's the beetles we looked at. First of all, we're feeding on the grubs feed on decaying wood, as do the adults, but there's also predatory ground beetles. These are the fast guys that you've seen around. And now I remember growing up, you'd go around a street light at night and there would be beetles all over the place and other insects. Now look around street lights now, and it is a far cry from what it used to look like in the 70s and 80s. And if you're of an older demographic like me, you know what I'm talking about. Now you can drive around any parking lot and look at up at the light and go, yes, there's insects, but man, back in the day, whew, depending where you were at, there were like oodles of them attracted to that light. So these beneficial ground beetles help reduce the need for chemicals, and they'll eat things like aphids, snails, caterpillars, slugs. There's a ground beetle munching on a slug right there. And ground beetles stay mostly under the surface. Their larvae does, where they'll eat underground dwelling pests, and they go into their pupa phase, eventually later emerging as adult ground beetles. And yeah, so both of the larvae and the adult eat any soil insect they come across. So there you see the larval stage of the ground beetle. Pretty cool. Okay, let's talk about lady beetles a little bit. Here's the 13 spotted lady beetles. And of course, they're one that everybody recognizes. They're a popular insect in the garden and on the farm. Both the larvae and the adults feed voraciously on aphids. I think a lot of people don't realize the larvae do as well. But they also feed on mealybugs and other soft-bodied insects. But there's the 13 spotted lady beetle, which I believe is our native. I say that because there's some invasive species out there. Um, 20 years ago, across North America, you could find thousands of ladybugs. Now it's a rare treat to spot native ladybugs. Our native ladybugs are gentle and beneficial to the garden, but the Asian lady beetle can actually become a pest. And so I think this is the convergent lady beetle is one of our natives, and you don't see it as much, but it's this that the fancy white line and and they can have up to 13 spots, but you don't really want to go by the spots. You want to go by that thorax with two converging white lines right there. That was the ID character for the convergent lady beetle, hence the name. But rare to see them anymore. So there is what the larvae of a lady beetle looks like. They're kind of a funky looking little critter, and they'll probably eat more aphids than the adults do. Let's see. Yeah, Michelle says, no, I haven't seen many ants either. And in older neighborhoods like where I live in South Omaha, I have cycles of small red or black ants moving in large masses in the spring to and from holes they dig between segments of my sidewalk. Yeah, you definitely see that, Janet. I'm just saying those sidewalk ants, that, back in the day, man, they were just, it seemed like they were all over the place, but I just don't see them as much anymore. And I'm not sure why that is, but we can speculate, but I think we kind of know why. Um, Anyway, our native lady beetles overwinter as adults, emitting a chemical that attracts them into groups in the fall and leaf litter or under logs or other debris in the garden. Leave the leaves as mulch to help the lady beetle find a winter home. So again, another reason to leave the leaves is you're going to improve and increase your lady beetle habitat, and more lady beetles means less aphids, less garden problems. I haven't had to spray insecticide at my place really ever. I've never sprayed for anything, and I've lived there for, over 30 years. This is another native species, especially common in southeast Nebraska. I've never bumped into this guy before, but this is the pink spotted lady beetle. I don't know if anybody else has seen that one before. The large lady beetle was introduced from Europe, becoming increasingly common in the 90s and is likely displacing native species. So this is the one we're more than likely seeing today. So it is the seven spotted. So if you count the spots, it's always seven, and it's a larger lady beetle, and they're the ones that bite you. How did these things become about? Well, remember them selling us on, oh, buy beneficial insects for your garden. Well, the lady beetles that you're releasing in traps were the Asian lady beetles and the European beetles. They didn't even bother to do the native lady beetles. Why? Because the other ones were easier to rear in captivity. They were easier to grow. They weren't as picky as the natives. So now we've got all these invasive lady beetles now. Oh boy. Anyway, oh yeah, that's awesome that you've seen the pink lady beetle, Bowie. They're pretty cool looking. I sure haven't. Okay, Morgan, go ahead with the questions.
All right, wonderful. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
No worries.
Um, okay, someone is asking if they are used to mowing their front and backyard, where do they put sedge? And they also ask, what the heck is sedge anyway?
Oh, oh, though they said we usually mow the front and backyard. Where do we put the sedge?
Yes, and then what is sedge?
Yeah, what the heck is it? Yeah, good question. It's like, okay, I assumed people knew it, right? I shouldn't do that. Yeah, sedge is our native carex. And you probably heard of yellow nut sedge. Yellow nut sedge is a weed. It came from Europe. It was introduced, yada yada. These are native sedges, and sedge is carex, Carex. And if you just type in sedge lawn alternatives or native woodland sedges for the garden. You'll see images online. They'll talk about the species. In fact, I'm just working on a handout that we're going to have available on our website. I was, in fact, working on it today, and then I'll include some native sedges in that handout. It's just not out there yet, but I'm telling you, there's good information on them. So they're basically clump forming, grassy looking plants. They're not a true grass. That's why we call them sedge, but they look like a grass. And again, they grow in these tufts. There's Pennsylvania sedge that runs like a lawn, and becomes a lawn. But most of them are these clump forming that you saw in the beginning, and that you can put wildflowers in between. So basically, the sedges I'm talking about are woodland sedges. So if your front and backyard are open and sunny, all you have to think of is, well, I'm going to put in a garden. I'm going to put in a perennial garden. So, meaning it wouldn't necessarily have sedges. But if your front or backyard is dealing with a lot of shade, your lawn doesn't like growing in shade very well anyway. So it's a good idea to convert those areas to landscape beds, i.e. sedge meadows. You can look up sedge meadow landscape ideas, native landscape ideas, and meaning you're going to just create, say, a pollinator garden in your full sun front or backyard, and you're going to reduce that mowing area. Maybe you reduce it a little bit every year. You don't have to do it all at once. Just do a little patch, find out how easy it is to take care of, expand it every year, and eventually, if your budget allows, eventually you're going to make maybe a 40 by 40 foot bed, depending on the size of your yard, that took you 5 years to create. Rome wasn't built in a day. So yeah, take your time and do it right. I think and it's very satisfying, right? Because you're out there in the garden enjoying it rather than worrying about aphids. Um, yeah, get this, the lady beetle eats its own weight in aphids as a larvae and consumes up to 50 a day as an adult. Invasive lady beetles compete for the same aphids as our native species. Now, I would like to think there's enough aphids to go around for both, but apparently the experts looking at this are saying these Asian and European species are outcompeting our native ones. Go figure. Yeah, yeah, the invasive beetles are also able to withstand colder winters. So yeah, it's just not a good thing. An Asian lady beetle has two large oval white markings and a white area in the middle, giving the black area the appearance of an M. Um, so you can see that there. They either have no spots or up to 22, and coloring is pale orange to dark red. So again, kind of confusing as to which is our native. and which is not. And what would I tell you to do anyway if you saw the non-native? I mean, come on, I don't know. You destroy the thing? Who knows? But it's just an issue that I wanted to point out to you. All right, have you ever seen this cool insect? One of the coolest ones out there, right? The assassin bug. And the assassin bug, certainly a predatory insect. It hides in the plant foliage and kind of waiting for the insects to come and pounces on them with its front legs very fast, and then has a long fang in the mouth that stabs the insect and it basically sucks it from the inside out. Kind of a gross thing, but that's the assassin beetle for you. Let's see. Yeah, and you heard the bugs bite. I've never been bitten by them, but yeah, it's probably one I wouldn't mess with. They just kind of look foreboding anyway. Just kind of, and I don't think they're going to attack you or bite you on purpose. It's just if you're, happen to disturb one, they might do that. Okay, let's talk about mantids a little bit. Looks like we got another chat. Let's see. All right. Um, Yeah, so now let's talk about the mantis, the praying mantis. We have a native mantis and the Chinese mantid. The Carolina mantis is our native. It's a smaller mantid, maybe about 2 to 3 inches. And of course, they eat many kinds of small insects, flies, moths, butterflies, you name it. They're seen as natural predators. They have wings that only extend partway along the back, though that doesn't hold true for males. So that's not the main identifier that you're going to use for do I have the native or do I have the invasive. The Chinese mantis is an introduced species that was first released in 1896 and are now by far our most common mantis out there. You've probably seen this one. They are just as likely to eat pollinators or other beneficial insects as pest species. I think they're an issue, and they may not be an issue to you now, but I hate to see what's going to happen in 20 years. They're larger, the female's getting to about 4 inches. They also have wings that extend beyond their abdomen, so that's one way to tell the difference. The wings go beyond their abdomen. Um, and they're green, pretty much all green rather than the brown like this guy. Um, Light colored line along the bottom edge of its wings that the native mantis lacks. So this white edge along the wing is also another issue. And if you look at this one, it's fat female, pregnant with eggs. I can't remember. I don't think I have that information. We'll see. The Chinese mantis has a voracious appetite and not be seen as a biological control of insect pests. You can actually find a YouTube video out there where they will basically stalk hummingbird feeders and take out hummingbirds. Go figure. And I just think they're an issue. And if you've seen them, they can get big. And so they're eating all sorts of beneficial insects, in my opinion. I think when I see them, they're gone. I destroy them. But that's just me because everybody usually sees a manta and think, oh, they're so cool. Oh, it's just a predator, Bob. What's the big deal? Well, I don't know, man. If we have hundreds and hundreds of them, I think it starts to become a deal. The egg cases called Uthika are different with the species. The Carolina, this is the native egg case. Um, it's a long egg case, while the Chinese one has an oblong one, looking as though the bottom was sliced off. Both species can vary widely in color, though the Chinese mantis tends to be green rather than the other colors of gray or brown. That's what a Chinese mantid egg case looks like. And I remember reading about some conservation group that went into a native habitat out east to eliminate these othikas. And in one area, I think it was like the size of a football field, they collected 153 uthikas. And why does that matter? Because one of those egg cases can probably contain, I don't know, 100 mantids. So, and they'll lay these darn egg cases anywhere, it seems. They're all over the place. So if you see something like this over winter, fall, winter, next spring, in my opinion, take it off and destroy it. Yeah, Christine is asking, should we reduce or eliminate Chinese mantid populations in our yards or give more opportunity? Yes, give more opportunity to the native species. That's just my opinion, Christina. I say eliminate them, destroy them, and the best time to do it is to get rid of the otheca, the egg case, because then you're getting 100 of them at once. That's just my opinion, folks. Take it or leave it, but I think they're going to become an issue. They're just not eating our plants, so we kind of discard them as, oh, they're cute and cool and yada yada. Off with their head, I say. All right, Eastern firefly. Let's talk about fireflies now. Adult fireflies eat mostly pollen and nectar. If you've ever wondered what the heck do fireflies eat, all they do is come out at night and flash around. But what do they eat, right? Are the very small green mantis native. Now, Sarah, the very small ones you're seeing are a young one likely, and if they're all completely green, I still call that the Chinese mantid. What I would say to be safe, Google images of immature Chinese mantid just to compare it to the Carolina, just to be safe. But from what I can tell, the smaller ones, we're talking, the native Carolina is a small mantid. It's like 2 inches, and they have more brown on them than they'll ever have green. But still, just kind of educate yourself on the difference between the two first, rather than just looking at the pictures I provided. Adult fireflies, yeah, eat mostly pollen and nectar. And the fireflies lay eggs in the ground in moist places near ponds and streams and in leaf litter. So your leaf litter becomes very important. They're not going to lay these eggs in the lawn. And so you can create a rain garden and don't collect the fallen leaves from your wooded areas, and you'll have more fireflies. I think we all need more fireflies, right? But the firefly larvae are uh, ground predators. Um, they kind of look like a ladybug larvae, but a little longer and skinnier. They'll eat those soft-bodied insects as well, even earthworms, maggots, slugs, snails that surface after rains and during mild weather, so they can kind of help keep populations in check as well. So fireflies become very important. That's why if you go out into more wild areas, maybe like Indian Cave State Park, which is one big garden of leaves, you'll see fireflies like crazy during firefly season. Janet's asking, do birds or rodents or some kind eat the egg pouches of the Chinese mantid? Yeah, those egg pouches are pretty, I wouldn't imagine would be very palatable looking to a rodent or critter, but I'm not sure about that, Janet. That'd be, oh man, did I just say this? Go ask AI. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I'm not sure about that one. That's a good question though. Or do birds or other critters eat the adult mantis, right? That I'm not even sure of either, because it seems like a big old 5-inch praying mantis would be quite a meal for a raccoon or a possum. I wouldn't be surprised if they do. Okay, yeah. So, of course, what's cool about fireflies is the fact that oh shoot, I didn't need to do that. I'm trying to get rid of this one thing. Most tools for shared. I'll forget it. Anyway, yeah, just a fascinating critter, right? Whoops. I think no, yeah, that's next. Yeah, have you ever seen this cool critter in the garden? No, this one, if you see it, they're kind of freaky looking. So I think our first intent is to kill them where they stand. Um, oh, okay. Bowie's saying Asian giant hornets eat the Chinese mantis eggs. Oh, wow. So great. I didn't realize we had Asian giant hornets here. Oh, great. Another introduced species. Well, it makes sense that an introduced species from Asia is eating an introduced species from Asia. That's kind of wild to say, isn't it, Bowie? Okay, earwigs. So if you see these guys, they're nocturnal insects. You might see them during the day, but they like dark, moist places. So to find them, it's usually like when you lift a dead log or something, they'll kind of scatter away, going, "Oh, I see light. I'm out of here." But again, they're harmless. They're feeding on dead or decaying plant and animal matter, but they'll also prey on aphids, insect eggs, maggots, grubs. So again, one of those beneficial insects that I think is just a cool looking critter. Um, yeah, so the earwigs, there you see they're kind of noted for that funky tail end. the pincers, if you will, at the end of the earwig's abdomen. They're capable of pinching, but the pinch is not powerful. The earwigs use their pinchers to ward off enemies like toads or birds or to catch prey. So yeah. And then they're also important for mats. They're indicators of gender, like tusks of an elephant. Pretty cool. But many other animals enjoy earwigs as part of their diet. Frogs, lizards, spiders, praying mantids, ants, other birds feed on earwigs regularly, and hence earwigs play an important role in the food chain. So they eat stuff and other stuff eats them. How about this critter, right? Maybe you've all seen those in your bathtub drain and they freak you out because they're really fast. That guy's called a house centipede. And they prefer dark, moist areas. That's why they're often hanging out in drains. But they can be found under leaves, logs. Maybe you've seen them in your compost heap before. But sometimes they will enter your home, become a nuisance. But their preferred habitat is outside, where they feed on insects. So completely harmless, but they are certainly freaky looking because they're so darn fast. But they're nocturnal carnivorous hunters and, very effective in population control for snails and any soft-bodied insects such as grubs and earthworms. So they're a good beneficial predatory insect, of course, as long as they stay outdoors and not in your house, right? But again, I just think they're a cool looking critter. Have you ever seen one of these? I think probably one of the coolest insects out there. I mean, this thing could star in a Hollywood movie just if you increase the size of it by 50 times. But yeah, it's another one of those stalking insects like the assassin bug, hence the name ambush. They'll lay waiting for their prey, motionless for a long time, and then they have very powerful front forelegs that can jet out, one of the fastest strikes in nature, like the praying mantis. They have such a fast release of those front forelegs to catch their prey. So again, it's another one that lays their eggs under leaves and in plant crevices. So again, just another reason. And what you'll see as you start creating a landscape using native plants, creating flower beds, leaving the leaves, you're going to start seeing these things show up if you're looking for them. And I think that makes it a lot of fun. Let it be your evening entertainment to go out and see what you can see tonight, right? How cool is that? Because as you start planting this stuff, you'll say, wow, I've never seen that before, because they'll find you, just like the movie, plant it and they will come. But if we don't plant it, they won't come. And if we don't leave the leaves, if we don't, try to think more with nature in mind, they won't show up. So we just need to do a better job of planting for insects, not just butterflies. So yeah, they pierce the bodies of their victims and then inject a lethal toxin that quickly kills the unlucky insect. The toxin also liquefies the inside, and the assassin then sucks up the liquid. Doesn't that sound great? And they have some unique color patterns too, and kind of resembling the flowers with which they hide. Greater numbers are found later in the season when they are especially common on goldenrod, and they often have some yellow tinge to them to kind of to ambush their prey on the goldenrod, because if you know goldenrod, it attracts a lot of different pollinating insects. So the ambush bug's going to wait there and hammer them. All right, maybe you've seen this cute little insect before. It likes to hang around patio lights, kind of flying at night. You think it's kind of an oversized mosquito, but it's not. Leave it alone. They're a good beneficial insect. Pale green, long antenna is how you can identify them. And then those transparent pale green wings and a very delicate looking body. They overwinter as adults in leaf litter. Once again, you'll see them show up more with a leaf litter type landscape. We have plenty of them at our place. The adult lacewings do not kill insects. They actually subsist on nectar, pollen, honeydew. Their offspring, though, they're the ones that prey on things like, small caterpillars, leaf hoppers, whiteflies, insect eggs. Aphids, things like that. So another predatory larval insect in the lacewing. And again, very common insect that you'll see around, just not as common as when I was growing up. Green wasteling larvae are sometimes called aphid lions and have been reported to eat between 100 and 600 aphids each in the larval stage. That's pretty impressive. So we need more lacewings. I think I saw something in the chat. Let's see here. Oh, so cute. Yeah, I hear you. And then maybe the wheel bug. You've seen this guy, very distinct looking insect with this kind of like stegosaurus type back on it. And again, the very long proboscis. And notice the critter that it's sucking the juice out of. That's right. That's the dreaded Japanese beetle. Good way for a Japanese beetle to go, right? We wheel bug taking him out. But they're just again one of those very unusual predatory insects that you'll start to see show up in your yard, landscaping with nature in mind. So they hatch into nymphs and disperse on the surrounding trees, hunting for prey, which includes aphids and caterpillars. Yeah, so that's where they get their name is that spiny wheel on their back there. So no other insect has that. So that's how you can tell them apart. Um, and then another one of those ambushing, stealth type insects that lie in wait for the prey to come to them. So anyway, cool bug, the wheel bug. What about daddy long legs? Growing up, man, we had daddy long legs all over the place. I have not seen a daddy long leg on our place, lived there for 30 years. Man, I don't know how long it's been. I swear it's been decades. Or maybe I've never seen him. I can't remember. All I know is I don't see him anymore. And I'm curious, do you guys see him anymore? They're not spiders, get this. They lack the ability to spin silk and have one oval-shaped fused body head abdomen, unlike a spider. A spider has a head, a thorax, and an abdomen. Let's see what's in the chat here. Oh, that's funny. I had one as a pet. That's cool. Yeah, daddy longlegs. So, okay, I'm curious. Somebody comment going, yeah, I don't see them around anymore. They're opportunistic hunters that mimic prey caught in web or other spiders, and they attack spiders and other spiders, right? They're omnivorous, eat insects, pests such as aphids, but they also eat on dead insects, fungus, bird droppings, worms, snails. Anyway, they're just great to have in the garden. They're mostly nocturnal in dark places like leaf litter and wood piles. I just don't see them around much anymore. There it is, sucking the juice out of a bottle fly. Uh, yeah, another feature that distinguishes them from spiders is they have a single pair of eyes that are located on top of the stalk, whereas I think spiders have what, 8 eyes or something like that. So pretty cool picture there of that daddy longleg up close. And maybe you've seen this spider, the goldenrod crab spider, that can change color depending on what flower it's sitting at to lie in wait and ambush an unsuspecting pollinating insect. Um, they don't spin webs to trap the insects. Instead, they ambush their prey, much like the wolf spider. Yeah, pretty cool. And so I'm imagining you have seen these before. And here's more of the yellow phase of it. I've certainly seen both the white and the yellow before. Cool looking spider with those oversized front claws that make him look like a crab. Yeah, that globe-shaped abdomen and the front legs are longer and stronger than the back legs. And there again, they can change color to match their surroundings, but often they're white. Let's see, we got some chat stuff going on here. Oh, we get them at work in our building. Oh, Robin, you must be talking about the daddy long legs. Well, that's good to hear because I'm just like, man, I don't want any of them just disappearing. Okay, here's a question. How does a home gardener tell a difference between an insect that's causing damage versus one that's actually helping? Or is this purely a matter of perspective? Yeah, that's a great question, I think it depends. Yeah, it depends on how you look at things. If your insects are eating up your whole tree, like get this as an example, these big fat caterpillars basically defoliated this young ash tree that I was managing a landscape. What the heck is eating this ash? But they had already defoliated it. The damage was done. If I sprayed that caterpillar what good is it going to do me? And I think people think, well, if I spray it now, they won't be around next year. Well, that's not necessarily true. Well, what was defoliated that ash tree, I found out was the cecropia moth. So I wouldn't have wanted to kill those, you know. So for me, yeah, it's a matter of perspective. And even if I see like aphids all over, say, my milkweed or all over, the tips of my asters, usually what I'm doing is just leaving them alone because I found the aphids won't kill the aster. They're just sucking some juice out. And oftentimes I'll just pinch the top off because that's where the aphids are hanging out. I'll cut the top off and make the aster branch out and produce new growth, or I'll just live with that little bit of damage. But you're right, that's a great question. And I think a lot of us are just afraid that if we don't do anything, our yard's going to be overrun with these non-beneficial insects. But studies have been done, and the determination I remember reading was like of all the insects out there that may inhabit your yard, your lawn, your landscape, 3% of those 100% might be, non-beneficial or cause problems in the garden, is what I'm trying to say. So 97% of them are beneficial. So if you do nothing about it, everything is likely to be okay. Again, take that with a grain of salt. It's easy for me to say if something is eating up your whole. The beautiful thing now is now we've got information with that phone in our hands. You can go to iNaturalist and, you know, ask somebody out there, what am I seeing and should I be worried about it? And then other people can chime in and say, yeah, we've had that before. It doesn't cause a big problem. Don't worry about it. Those types of things. I think we all can become connected now. Unlike in the past, our first response was to go grab the spray and spray it and ask questions later. So now at least we are at least asking questions. Here's another critter, the yellow garden spider. I don't see them around. When I worked at the fairgrounds back in the 90s, I had garden spiders. I mean, literally a dozen of them every year in and around the garden space I was occupying. I have not seen a garden spider in my yard in a long time. I'm hoping others are seeing them. I think they're a cool um, spider. Are the yellow garden spiders territorial? They seem to be sort of evenly spaced across the yard. Yeah, I agree, Janet. I'm just glad you're seeing them. And I'm like, why am I not seeing them, right? But yeah, I would suspect that they are because you're right. It's not like they plant themselves right next to each other. And I imagine they're territorial because it's like, dude, the insects in this area are mine. And I've even been naughty and kind of collected a young grasshopper or two and throw it into the web. And it's fascinating seeing how quick they pounce on that grasshopper and wrap him up for later use. Let's see, Morgan's saying another anonymous. Have you heard of a robber fly? Yes. I think I have robber fly coming up. Really cool bug. Yeah, and robber flies will freak you out when you see them. It's like, whoa, spooky looking. They're fun. Um, any suggestions on deterring Japanese beetles without using insecticides? Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that they're trees and berry bushes too tall, large to knock them off into soapy water. Yeah, that is a hassle, Desiree. And all I can say is, they kind of tend to be cyclical. And I shouldn't say cyclical even. I had problems on some of my plants at home. I had a grapevine and they decimated it one year, and I thought, man, what am I going to do? Didn't do anything about it. Year two, three, four, I don't even see them anymore. Um, I guess I'm of the approach to just let nature take its course here. And again, I know it's easy for me to say because what are you going to do about it? I'm not going to want you to go grab a chemical company and have them spray your tree because it's going to take out other beneficial insects too. And the thing about Japanese beetles, they feed so late in the year. And yes, it could make it look unsightly and literally skeletonize all the leaves on your tree or shrub. But that from what I'm hearing and from people in the know that have had them for years, that the trees and shrubs are not killing them. The trees and shrubs are coming back fine the following year. And it makes me nervous if they're hit year after year after year after year defoliating the tree. But if they're just seeing, maybe 50% of it damaged or sparse damage, don't sweat it at all. You're not going to prevent them from coming back next year. Don't put out the traps. You'll just invite more in. So yeah, I would just say for me, unless somebody else has a really tried and true way. Um, yeah, she doesn't spray for insects outside or inside anymore, but people warn her it can lead to infestations. Is that true? Also, if I find an insect inside, what should I do? Should I put it outside? Well, that's up to you. Some people just say, smash it, right? Some people are very adamant, they catch a spider inside, we're bringing it out. Yeah, for me, if an insect's made a mistake coming inside, sorry, buddy, you're toast. But that's just how I roll. Now, I'm not saying everybody should do that. Um, let's see. I'm getting lots of flies feeding on aphid dew on my prairie milkweeds. Is this common? Huh. Yeah, I have not noticed that before, Beth. So yeah, you've actually witnessed them with their little spongy mouth parts feeding on it. That's not surprising if you think about it. I mean, there's sugar sap in that honeydew from aphids, and I yeah wouldn't be surprised at all. I'm curious if you're seeing house flies or is it the colorful bottle flies? Is or does it matter? Maybe you're seeing a number of there's some definitely beneficial flies, and we'll get to those coming up here. All right, yeah. So anyway, people warn her can lead to infestations. I'm not buying that, Sam. I mean, come on, what? It's like, oh, if you don't do anything about it, you're gonna have ants coming out of your ears. I say just, seal your house up, right? And it's not like you not spraying for your ants is gonna lead to more. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't buy that. I wouldn't worry about that, but that's just me. Okay. I'm trying to fly through these, but you guys have so many good questions. This is great. Okay, so we'll move on. Yeah, so we all see that the spider will inject venom into the prey, killing them and liquefying the internal organs. So if you've ever seen this, it is just a cool thing to see in nature how fast they spin that critter with their silk. They're pros, that's for sure. Um, anyway, um, yeah, seeing at rest, they often see at rest at the center of the web. You ever notice that? And they're feeling for vibrations from intruders. When the prey is caught, the spider waits until they are no longer moving and pull at the silks of the web to find where the prey has been captured. The dense area of silk towards the center of the web forms a zigzag pattern. And this is human speculation. It may be used as a camouflage to warn birds of the web's presence or to attract prey. This pattern is only common to spiders that are active during daylight hours. Isn't that interesting? So those nighttime webs that are being formed right now, nightly, don't include that zigzag pattern because they're after the night flying insects, those night spiders, if you will. So then there's the cool wolf spiders, right? They're solitary and live in a variety of ground habitats, low vegetation, woodland leaf litter. They are the Speedy Gonzales of the spider world, so fast and you know, cool spiders. Maybe you've seen this before, where the devoted mothers of a wolf spider that carry the silken egg sac on its back. And once the eggs are hatched, the wolf spider carries her babies around the back for several days as well. So here it is with the egg sac, and there it is with the little babies, keeping them protected until they're out and ventured out on their own. But yeah, wolf spiders, they're kind of freaky, I realize, when you see them, and but most people just take them out. All right. Yeah, and again, those long legs allow them to run really fast and ambush or hunt their prey. Generally, those ground-dwelling insects. But of course, they also wait for prey to pass by too, reacting to vibration caused by their wings. One thing I forgot to mention about the ground spider, have you ever noticed if you disturb the web of a one of these spiders, they will actually kind of move their web back and forth like it looks like it's bouncing back and forth, and that's kind of a warning signal to say get away. I think it's kind of cool to see. There's your robber flies. Yeah, big old insect, big old fly, and amazing flyers. They'll kind of freak you out if they ever fly by you. And and they'll actually snatch the insects right out of the air. They're like, amazing jet fighters. Grasshoppers, mosquitoes, other insects. So they're very much a beneficial critter to have around. And another one, I say, like with these beneficial insects I'm talking about, make it a point to say, how many different species of insects can I see in my yard? Heck, you can even be an insect nerd and document how many different species you've seen in your yard. And just know the more plants you plant, the more diverse you make your landscape, i.e., trees, shrubs, perennials, ground covers, leaf litter, you will see those species numbers go up. So I challenge you to do a before and after. You know what I mean? Just kind of go out and do a nature palooza in your backyard and see how many different insects you can spot. All right, the robber fly injects its prey with toxic saliva too to immobilize it, and eventually the saliva liquefies the innards, and they drink up the resulting beetle soup. The larvae overwinter in the soil, mostly in decaying organic matter under leaf litter once again. So you're starting to see a pattern here. Where do these insects like to overwinter? Don't we all want to know? It's the leaf litter and in the soil under the leaf litter, that transition zone, folks. So it's important stuff. Let's see, their mouth parts form a stiff, hollow beak that serves as a dagger, then as a hypodermic needle, and finally as a straw. What a cool critter, right? The robber fly. And look at their larvae. What a funky looking larvae. If you're digging around with your planting things in the spring, and sometimes you'll come across these weird larvae where you're like, what in the heck is that? Heck, put it on iNaturalist and somebody will be able to identify it for you, I guarantee. So those pupa will eventually migrate to the soil surface and emerge as adults. So yeah, cool stuff. And yeah, and this time of year, we're seeing these guys show up, the common whitetail skimmer. And this is a very common dragonfly that you see this time of year with that white body, really gives it away. And that chalky white tail. And again, these are also jet fighters. I mean, talk about impressive flying machines. And the difference between a dragonfly and say, we'll look at the damselfly next. A dragonfly's wings don't fold. They're always displayed outward like that. And here's a female laying eggs in the water. And so their larval stage is a dragonfly nymph that you see here underwater. And they're a predatory critter that's feeding on insects and other things underwater. And if you've ever seen those, know that you have a healthy water. It's a good indicator if you have a water garden or a water feature. If you see dragonfly nymphs, that your water quality, that your water chemistry is balanced and in good shape. It's a great way to know your pond is healthy. And then there's your damselflies, and your damselflies, of course, look more delicate. Their abdomen is more linear and um, thin. And then, of course, they fold their wings. But maybe you've seen this ebony jewel wing around the garden, really cool, kind of an iridescent shine to this black and blue insect, if you will. So yeah, love the damselflies, but they're another one that lay their eggs in water and then have underwater aquatic juveniles that are predatory underwater. And there again, when they're ready, they molt and the adults fly on out, and away you go. All right, let's talk about a few flies here. We're coming up about 10 minutes left. So many bugs to talk about. Isn't it cool seeing all the beneficial insects? All right, so the bottle fly is one of those flies you see around, and yes, they have maggots just like any other. The green bottle fly is actually a species of blowfly, and it deposits its eggs mainly on freshly killed animals and on garbage that contains meats. So it is a native good fly. They're good pollinators, particularly plants that produce clusters of tiny flowers. So maybe you've seen these colorful flies on your flowers. Know that they are beneficial. They're also pollinating just like the bees because the butterflies have hairy bodies as well. And then that pollen will stick to that hairy body and get deposited on the next one. And they often pollinate those flowers with strong odors. Maybe you've stuck your nose in some of those so-called stinky flowers. If you've ever smelled an arrowwood viburnum, you know what I'm talking about, or a dogwood, pawpaw flowers, hawthorn. I describe the hawthorn or arrowwood viburnum as smelling like a concert restroom. So kind of picture what that might smell like. That's what bottleflies are attracted to, the stinky flowers. So they have the blue bottlefly and the green bottlefly. Then you have these little cute guys called syrphid flies. And how can you tell? Oh, yeah, you're putting the survey up. Sorry. You know me, Morgan. I'll talk and talk and talk.
No,
I'm
keep
trying,
going.
kiddo.
This just gives them a chance to listen and answer.
Very good. Yeah, you guys go ahead and fill out that survey while I'm chit-chatting. We're just looking at bugs. You're not going to miss anything. But maybe you've seen these little guys around before. They're called syrphid flies. And this will help distinguish what they look like bees, right? They're mimicking bees. So you maybe get kind of scared of them. And like this person, what they're doing here is they have spongy mouth parts. They're just licking up the salts, sweaty from this person's sweaty fingers. So they're after the salts on your skin. They're not out after bothering you or stinging you or anything. It can't. Um, and a fly has two wings. Bees have four. So that's one way to tell them apart. And they also hover. So a hoverfly is another name for a syrphid fly because they have that cool. Yeah, here's another type of syrphid fly called a hoverfly. A hoverfly suits them best, I think, because they're kind of stealth. They can hover right in front of you. But they're famous for visiting flowers, hovering around them and intimidating people who think they might sting, right? You've maybe seen them before, but get this, those syrphid flies really shine in the garden. Their larvae eat aphids. So there's a picture of a syrphid fly larvae, unlike the maggots you're used to seeing, say, with a housefly. So these are a fly larvae, a maggot, but they're actually feeding on aphids. How cool is that, right? A single larva can eat up to 20 to 30 aphids a day and up to 400 during its development. So important garden predators. So this lowly little guy is very important in your garden. So love your hoverfly. I think they're super cool. Hoverflies are incredible mimics of bees and wasps, but they do not bite or sting. Recognize them as true flies by their single pair of wings, short antenna, and the fly-like compound eyes. There you see the huge eyes, which is typical of flies. And again, important pollinators, especially on the small flowered plants. You see these smaller critters, smaller beneficial pollinators on the small flowering plants. And then you got this one, the tachinid fly. And tachinid flies have dorsal bristles, setting them apart from the common housefly. So if you look, it's like going, wow, is that a housefly? It's kind of big. And then you look at those bristles. You see those bristles on its abdomen. Houseflies do not have that. That's how you can tell the difference. So leave the tachinid flies alone. They're important. And often you'll see this two-toned guy on the flowers. It deserves a big high five for it work it does in the garden. Adults will lap nectar out of these small little flower clusters, and they fly from flower to flower in search of food. Pollen collects in their tongues, legs, and bodies. They're good pollinators. So yes, flies are important too. And they will lay their eggs on host plants like caterpillar or host critters like caterpillars. And then again, you see the eggs, and as as the caterpillars or as the eggs are hatching, it's feeding on the caterpillar. That caterpillar is toast. Sorry, buddy. Um, yeah, the tachinid fly. And maybe you've seen these cute little guys, the bee fly. Um, like flower flies, bee flies are also use mimicry to ward off predators while they feed on flower nectar for energy. So they look like a little bee, but it's actually a fly. Maybe you've seen those fuzzy little guys around. Know if you see a bee fly, you're doing things right because they're not common in the landscape. Probably the cutest bug that we're going to see tonight, right? Oh, yeah, David, I love it. Will we get a part two so Bob can finish the slides? David, you know me. You're right. I'm not going to get done. And I always add, I always add more than I know I'm going to finish because I don't care. Just the way I roll. And I'd be happy to do a part two at some point, maybe over the winter. And Morgan, I don't know if you're going to let people know where you're heading. All right, Adam saying badass. I love it. Yeah, yeah. So I think we can get a part two because I haven't even got to butterflies. I haven't even got to bees yet, right? And amongst other critters. And I'm actually going to talk too in part two about the best pollinator plants that I know of as far as to put in your garden. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We're just going to stop there because I know it's pushing 8. Let's see. Yeah, it's 7:55. Well, let's stop for quickly here to see if there's any questions in the chat and and maybe just wrap things up here.
Um, yeah, I think a part two is necessary at this point, and um, we'll chat some details out, Bob. But I do have some things in the Q&A, statements, questions, kind of a little bit of both. Someone's just acknowledging and says, "Wait, has anyone else lived in their house for 30 years and never sprayed for anything? That's a high standard, Bob." And that's
Yeah,
from Steven.
yeah, it's kind of crazy to say that, and I think where my fear of not spraying came from because I mean, if I was just an average homeowner, honestly, yeah, I probably would have broke down and sprayed some things. Because I remember having aphids one year, like these red aphids on my black-eyed Susans, and I'm like, oh man, hammer them. But I had come from working at the fairgrounds, and I learned managing a big area like that it was just kind of not necessary. If they got aphids, the plants would overcome it. And what I found about being not necessary is because I was managing such a large space and didn't have enough help or whatever, and I couldn't be everywhere at once, critters would take advantage of me and do their thing, and yet the plant would not die from it. It would come back. It would be okay. Everything was okay. And I think nature got along just fine without us humans for millennia. And along come us humans going, okay, plant eating my flower equal bad thing. I think I will kill you. And I understand the why of it. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, I can honestly say that I have not sprayed an insecticide in my yard, and I just don't feel it's necessary. And correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe there's a lot of other people out there that say, "Oh man, dude, I have to spray for these every year because." I'd love to hear the why of it. I like how Beth says, "I'm an artist. I draw flies." I love it. Yeah, only you would do that, right, Beth? I'm curious what's your favorite fly to draw? Because of course I'm sure you've seen this cute little bee fly before and you love him.
Okay, hopefully Beth is still on and oh, there we go.
Yes, this guy, that's fun.
Um,
Okay.
Karen is saying that she thinks it's important to mention that not only do we need to have a habitat for fireflies, but that artificial light can mess them up as well as
Huh.
other insect species.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, I didn't think of that either, and all the artificial light we have and just the concrete jungle. That's why I say don't, certainly we want native plants and more of them. But don't chastise those folks just for planting something because they're planting. That's a good thing. Because they're creating habitat no matter what. And I think that's important. And the more of us that create habitat, and even Doug Tallamy said, he's the one that wrote Bring Nature Home, right? And certainly an entomologist, and he knows the importance of native plants, but he says shoot for the 70-30. Let my landscape be 70% native and maybe 30% non-native. And what I mean by that is, well, I love my such and such. I got to have it, right? I got to have my garden sage because it's an herb. But last time I checked, when my garden sage is in full bloom, the pollinators are all over it. So, yeah, it's just, I think it's important to just keep planting, period.
Perfect. We do have a question. Michelle's asking how could she fix her lawn in order to keep the city off her case? She has a lot of sun and poor soil and has sunflowers coming up, but city is telling her she can only have them next to her house, otherwise they will come mow the lawn. So basically, is there a solution for that issue with her lawn and her upkeep.
Okay, so I'm sorry I missed that. So you were saying that the sunflowers are seeding in her lawn?
Yes, sunflowers come up, but the city said that she can only have them next to her house. If she does not do that, they will come mow the front lawn where those sunflowers are. So, is there a solution to fixing that?
Uh, yeah. I suppose to the city, and get this, the city doesn't go around looking for violators because I know and I've interviewed our city weed inspector. Gosh, I can't remember his name. Somebody that gets called in probably tell me what his name is on a first name basis. And he told me that we're not out to harass people that are trying to go native, that are trying to go a little more wild with their yards. If it becomes a line sight issue, i.e., those spaces between the sidewalk and the curb is a big issue to them for height, and it's 37 inches, by the way. And sometimes you can get by with a little taller than that, depending on if you live in a quiet neighborhood versus, a road that gets a lot of traffic. Um, yeah, and Christina says right plant, right place, maybe a shorter native plant. Exactly. And they're going to give you a hard time because those sunflowers that have seeded in likely came, let's say, from a bird feeder. They tend to be kind of weedy looking to your neighbors. Your neighbor called in and said, they're not taking care of their weeds. The city comes, finds out it's a height issue. You need to take care of these because of that. I'm not sure of the whole story. All I can say is sometimes it's a matter of scale. And if you've got really short stuff around it, and all of a sudden you've got this monstrosity of a plant coming up right in the yard, it looks like a weed to your neighbors, they're going to call you in. And what the city told me is we know somebody that has a so-called planned landscape, i.e., they can tell when they pull up if you've been planning this wild look or neglecting your yard and neglect what they attribute their warning sign is if you have a lot of sucker trees in your landscape. Because if you have a lot of sucker trees that are just coming up, what I mean by that is trees that have just seeded in and are becoming a nuisance, i.e., they're getting to be maybe 5 feet tall, 3 feet tall, 10 feet tall. There's yards out there that are giving other yards a bad name because everybody kind of thinks that's the whole scheme of things that the city's not going to allow that. No, they're looking for neglect. And if people are out managing their landscape, i.e. keeping those sucker trees out of it, they're going to leave you alone. My place got called in and I told him I know why whoever complained. And of course he told me, I can't tell you who it was. And of course, for obvious reasons, you might go knocking on your neighbor's door and get into some sort of confrontation. Well, and I said, it was because of my sedge meadow. And I told him it's not going to get any taller than this. I'm sure to the neighbor it looked like I was lazy mowing, but I'm creating habitat with this. He didn't make me do a thing. Um, and that's when he told me about the sucker tree thing. He said, I could tell when I pulled up this was planned. It wasn't just a neighbor, getting lazy and just neglecting their landscaping, letting trees grow everywhere and grass get and weedy and all this and that. Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question.
All right. Sam is asking, is there a more ideal time to wipe away spider webs outside, like on lawn furniture? Do they mostly feed at night? And is it difficult for them to make another web before feeding time?
Yeah, I tell you, they're fast, aren't they, man? And I should have learned what the heck the name of that spider is that makes those nests overnight, or I mean those webs overnight. And often, of course, in the places you're walking the next morning. Annoying. I know what you're saying. And I always feel bad. It's like, buddy, why did you make it right there, you fool? I have to walk here every day. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, how to prevent that. I mean, I just think that's part of nature's pageantry. The spider's got to live with you, taking your sidewalk, and if you can't figure it out and make a nest somewhere else, sorry, buddy. But I mean, if I can go around, I will. But for the most part, if it's my walk from my door to my car that I'm taking every day, it's kind of, and I'm taking out a spider web to get there. Yeah, it is what it is. But that spider, whatever the name of it is, it often shows up this time of year. Man, you walk the woods like Wilderness Park. holy moly, they're all over across the trails and whatnot. But yeah, I can't really answer that question.
All right. I'll try to go quickly. I'm sorry. I know we're going over time.
Don't worry.
Another question is, does anything prey on the invasive jumping worm?
Oh, the invasive jumping worm. Is that what
Yes.
the jumping worm?
Uh-huh.
Boy, yeah. I don't know, man. I think I've seen those before. They are freaky. Like when it's like, man, I know earthworms, and we used to go out and catch night crawlers for fishing when I was a kid, I remember. But man, I don't know if I've seen that jumping worm before. If I have, it's that one that just like as acts all like spasmodic, just like blah, 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 all over the place. I would imagine, I would hope that robins are taking them and other critters feeding on them. I don't know how evasive they are in outmaneuvering predators. Yeah, I can't answer that one either. That'd be a good question for somebody that studies those things, or maybe look it up online and see if you can get any answers to that.
Got it. Hannah is asking, have you found any successful tactics for educating neighbors on the ecological damage to these beneficial bugs that come from spraying or fogging? I live in an
Mhm.
HOA where a huge majority around me use insecticides.
Oh boy. Oh boy, boy, oh boy. Yeah, I wish I had an easy answer there for you. And if you start questioning things, they look like, oh, you're one of those, tree hugger or whatever, I think, yeah, I don't know. I think you just got to approach it gently, and just say, did you know, um, insects are in decline, and why does that matter? I mean, habitat loss. God, that's a tough one, man. There's people smarter than me that know what what to say to your neighbor on that one. I can't relate. I don't see our neighbors out there spraying a whole lot, which is a good thing. But I know what you're talking about, and yeah, I could start with the conversation. All I can say is, you keep planting your stuff. And then if you're not seeing any insects, I have a lot of pollinating insects or pollinating plants at my house, and I don't see hordes of insects on them, bees or otherwise. And I'm concerned, and I think my neighborhood, it's not necessarily spraying, it's just lack of flowers, period. There's people not landscaping. It's wall to wall turf with maybe a few hedge shrubs, and yada yada, but and then I'm like that lone household in the neighborhood that has, no lawn and that type of thing. And there's been studies done as like 1 in 100 households is into this type of gardening where, the more plants, the better. And how do we convert the others? And I think that's where you get creative and say, I need to create a wild yard, but yet tamed so the neighbors accept it. And so the neighbors are more apt to do that because they think it's really cool and nice looking. Because I guarantee you they're thinking more about resale value than they're ever thinking about how many insects am I supporting planting here, and who can blame them, right? I mean, that's they may see a what they view as a weedy landscape as a detriment to their home values, right? We've all heard that before, probably. But I don't think it hurts to talk to them, but just don't come across as this, it's this way or the highway. I just think there's just reasons to bring it out in the open and say, man, if we don't do something, nature is screwed. Uh, yeah, Dan is saying, I'm wanting to plant spring ephemerals and I'm wondering what Nebraska's early pollinators are. Yeah, that's a good question, Dan. It's mostly, I think, your smaller bees are going to come out. You may have some butterflies that are, earlier butterflies out there too. But yeah, those spring ephemerals are going to mainly be hit by smaller native bees. Certainly, when the bumblebees are emerging, it's kind of timed with that as well, because you'll see and not necessarily spring ephemerals. You don't have to resort just to those spring ephemeral woodland plants. There's other spring bloomers that aren't ephemerals, like Solomon seal for is a good example. The bumblebees love them. But what those early pollinators are, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to tell you.
Alrighty. Um,
Wow, what a popular subject, huh, guys?
yeah, you might
And,
need like
and
three parts. I don't
but
know.
but you see what I mean, though? It's like, have you ever had a webinar where somebody just talked about bugs? I mean, and how good they are. Usually, it's like, oh, here's what you need to kill this with, or, oh, and here you spray this with that. And we
Yeah.
need an entomologist to do this. We need Jody from Extension to do a talk like this, and I think she probably has one out there. But
Yeah, and she's
man,
wonderful too.
I need to get Jody on my radio show. So stay tuned to How's It Growing.
Yeah. Um, we we have two more. I'll read these last two to Bob, and then I was just gonna say, when this is over in the next couple of weeks, I'll send this presentation out again. And Bob, as usual, I'm going to include your email on there. And I think it's safe to say if anyone has more follow-up questions, they can go ahead and reach out to you, or over there at Plant Nebraska. And as far as I know, I think we could talk about this for days at a time.
Who would have thunk it? Talk about bugs for days.
So, I'll read these last two for you so everyone can get back to their evenings. But just to throw that out there, I will share the presentation and Bob's information. So,
Cool.
um, so this question is, when I fertilize my flowers, does it hurt the insects? And should I use a granular fertilizer or a liquid?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure of that. I would say look that one up and see is it harmful? Like when you're using a liquid fertilizer and it's getting into the soil and yada yada, is that harming the fungi, bacteria, small insects that are in the soil? Man, I wish I knew that one, but I don't. But I can't imagine it's good. Let's put it that way. Those water soluble fertilizers. For me, I would say. And I know it's easier said than done, certainly with bedding plants and whatnot, fertilizing. I'm more apt to use a slow release fertilizer than a water soluble. I don't know why, like a granular, like you said. But it's spare. I use them sparingly, mostly just for my bedding plants. I don't fertilize my perennial flowers, my shrubs, my trees ever. I never will. There, I'm relying on leaf litter to do the fertilizing for me. I'm relying on putting down some compost even before I made the bed, and maybe top dressing with compost as I'm going through the seasons. So let the compost be your fertilizer. But if you have to put some down, just say, I'm going to limit these synthetic fertilizers to just my annual pots or my annual flower bed. I think, and if you use that attitude, you're going to have, you're going to feel better about yourself. And then I like Caitlin saying Xerces Society. Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't mention them earlier. Great resource, great people there doing great work. And Xerces Society, I've had them on my radio show for every year. I think they're set to come on here in the near future. And I think we're talking about wasps, the benefit of wasps this time. I can't quite remember. Anyway, tune in.
All right. Circling back to early pollinators, we did have somebody say small carpenter bees, yellow-faced bees, queen bumblebees, and a few butterfly species are early pollinators, just to throw that out
Okay.
there.
Okay.
And the final question I have for tonight, do you think there is GMO going on in the seed producers to get bigger, brighter flowers, but then the pollen or flower color is not what the pollinators are made to recognize or digest?
Mm. Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And a lot of times things come up like they call them nativars or selections of native plants. I would just challenge you if you look up a selection of a native plant. Let's take an aster, for example. There's an aster out there called aromatic aster, and the straight up species is not very common in the trade. So it's hard to just go and buy it somewhere. You can, yes, don't get me wrong, but there's selection out there called Rayden's Favorite, and there's another one called October Skies. Oh, don't plant those. There's nativars. The insects don't touch them. and I'm here to say that's horse hockey. Radin's favorite was found in nature, so was October skies. Most of these named plants, these nativars, were found in nature. They weren't produced by a GMO lab coat. And the GMOs, those genes that are being inserted mainly into agronomic crops. I'm not aware of flowers having GMOs in them. I could be wrong, but I'm not aware of that. What they're doing, if they're doing any breeding work or hybridization, what they're generally after, sure, they may be after a larger flower. And a lot of the breeders, not a lot, but the flowers sometimes, the cultivars of purple cone flower give all the other nativars a bad name because those flowers, they have created what's called double flowers. There's some double flowered coreopsis out there in the trade, native plants. There's some double flowered echinaceas out there. And what happens is this double flower, the critters can't get at the pollen because it's so packed with flower petals. Like think of a peony that has an open disc in the middle that pollinators can hit versus a peony that's all carnation-like. That's what I mean by double flower. So what happens, why they do that is the flower gets tricked into it doesn't pollinate, it doesn't produce seed, so the flowers tend to bloom longer. And they keep blooming because the plant is tricked into thinking, I'm not getting my reproduction done here, so I'll produce more flowers. But I'm telling you, those flowers are very few and far between. Jill's on. Good job, Jill. For those dealing with the weed control, be sure to push back. Yes, I agree. They'll show up, educate them. When they come out and you start talking about naming the names of your plants, they will leave you alone. But just know, Jill, you know that they didn't come looking for your place. Somebody called you in, whoever those people were. The weed guys don't go around looking for violators. They don't have the manpower to do that. Of course, unless you have a yard full of thistles, then they're going to probably notice you. But yeah, I love people asking about the GMOs and stuff and the native R's. I'm glad I had a chance to address that. Don't feel chastised by going with those native R's. Um, yes, some native R's also become poor host plants from recoloring, like green to red leaves. Great point, Adam. And those nativars are few and far between, and I tend to avoid those too. But if you think about it, Adam, most of those red-leafed or purple-leafed nativars are shrubs. What I was referring to is perennials. There's very few, if any. Indeed, I can't think of really many. Maybe some cori or heuchera species and a few others, I'm sure. But the vast majority of those people going with colored leaves is the shrub and tree segment, but I agree. Yeah, try to avoid them. Yeah, and that the penstemon, Adam, that Husker red penstemon that has the red in its leaves, Dale Lindgren from North Platte bred that. That's why I say if you're I'm one of these plant nerds where I look up their origin or I talk to the person that actually introduced it. In this case, I knew Dale Lindgren, and he said it was a lady that gave him a call. It was growing naturally, and well, she planted this penstemon, and one of the seedlings had red leaves on it. Now, does that mean nothing's feeding on that penstemon? Well, penstemon is not a very common larval host. I certainly don't see things eating on my penstemons at all, ever, really. But again, in general, yes. Research is showing that if they selected something like a Diablo 9 bark, the host is not going to necessarily lay the eggs on that. But that's the 9 bark shrub. Few and far between. But yes, good point, Adam.
All right. Well,
Did I
I
wear you
can't,
guys out?
yeah, we're to the end. I
How
can
many questions did we get, Morgan? Holy moly.
a lot. This was good.
Yeah,
This was great. I'm really
yeah.
happy. I want to say thanks to everyone for joining, but most of all, thanks to Bob. The last 3 years have flown by, so this has been great. I love these presentations and I love your like vast knowledge and you're always willing to share chat and I love it. I think it's great. So, um I have nothing further. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody and especially to you, Bob. I really appreciate your time. So,
You're
um,
welcome.
yeah, I hope everyone
Well,
has a
really,
great evening and look for a follow-up email from me and reach out to
yeah.
Bob with all your questions.
Yeah, stay tuned to Conservation Nebraska. Keep supporting them and stay tuned for part two of beneficial backyard bugs.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.